Hello, Emma Rees Crime here, your fellow crime, thriller and mystery book lover. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I have for you my October reading wrap up. I said this in September and I'm going to say it again in October, but where has the month gone? Time is flying. As with my reading wrap up videos, I'm going to start with my least favourite and end on a high with my favourite, but the real question is, did any of them score 5 stars out of 5? And then towards the very end, I'm going to slightly touch upon some books which will be in my November TBR. For next month, I'm not sure I'll be able to do a November wrap up depending on when the little man comes. So it might end up being a November-December combined wrap up, but we'll see. But anyway, I'll stop waffling and let's get straight to the books. My first DNF of October was Nowhere Burning by Katrina Ward. I've never read this author before, but I've always heard really great things and I was so excited to read this, but unfortunately it wasn't for me and I'm really devastated. Nowhere House was famous because movie star Leaf Winham lived there. His house was in the middle of nowhere because he wanted to hide from his fame, but little did people know he was also using this home to hide his crimes. In the present day, it is rumoured to be a refuge for runaway children. It follows main character Riley, who drags her brother out of bed in the middle of the night in order to seek this refuge. I DNF'd this around the 50% mark, so I did give it a really good go, but I just couldn't vibe with the writing style. There were too many POVs in the story for my opinion, and the writing just wasn't holding my attention. My second DNF of the month was The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. Michaela from What Michaela Reads and her wife Amy bought me this for my birthday in March, and I've been saving it especially for spooky season, and I am devastated that it wasn't for me. Ji-won's life is in disarray after finding out that her father has been having an affair and he leaves the family. Her mother gets a new boyfriend and he is obnoxious and a bit of a pervert. And all Ji-won can think about is his bright blue eyes. I ended up DNFing this around the 25% mark. I was gonna muster on through, but I spoke to my friend Ashley about it, who also didn't enjoy it, and he said if I wasn't enjoying it by the 25% mark, then it doesn't really improve and it was unlikely that I'd enjoy it more. And at the end of the day, life is too short to read books that we're not enjoying. It was a shame though, because I have heard people rave about it. Next up is The Lamb by Lucy Rose, which I gave 2 stars to. It's really tricky to tell you about what the story is about because there wasn't really a plot, but it follows a mother and a daughter who are cannibals, and then a stranger comes to live with them and joins in with their cannibalism. It's a first-person character-driven novel, which isn't my favourite, especially when the character has no personality apart from the fact that she's a cannibal, but that's not exactly groundbreaking. It really lacked plot, and the ending, quite frankly, was weird. I really wish I DNF'd it, hence the 2 stars. Next we have The Butcher's Daughter by David Demchuk and Corinne Lee Clark, which was mine and Michaela's in-person book club pick for October. The plot is the untold story of Mrs. Lovett, who you may recognise from Sweeney Todd. The story is told through mixed media format, i.e. letters and newspaper clippings, which I enjoyed, but some of the letters were too long. I absolutely hated the first 260 pages and I would have DNF'd it if it hadn't have been for book club, but I did enjoy the final 140 pages. It did turn itself around a bit. Not enough to be glad that I finished it. I still think I would have rather have DNF'd it, but at least it improved as I read on. Part of the problem is a me problem with the fact that I love the Sweeney Todd movie and I was expecting the backstory to marry up to the movie and it doesn't, but that is not the book's fault, that's my expectations. I struggled to give this a star rating, so I settled on 2.5 stars out of 5. Next is Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning, which I thought would be great for spooky season because it's a slasher horror book. The main character is an actress and she gets cancelled for a tweet that she posts, so she ends up going to this camp to get away for a bit. During her first night, they sit around the campfire talking about ghost stories, and obviously the main character isn't fazed by it because ghosts aren't real. However, campmates then start disappearing. This wasn't my cup of tea, but it was fine and easy, but I just felt the writing was really youthful. It felt like I was reading a YA book as opposed to an adult book. Don't get me wrong, I love a YA book, but I was looking to read more of a mature book. I wasn't in the mood for a YA book, even though this wasn't a YA book. It was an adult book, but yeah, it just wasn't the vibe for me. I gave it 3 stars out of 5. Next is another book which I had really high expectations for, and that is We Live Here Now by Sarah Pinborough. I have been hearing rave reviews about this. Emily has just recovered or come out of a coma, and her husband Freddie move into this new house. They have moved outside of London, they're now in the countryside. However, Emily is getting bad vibes that this house is haunted, it's creepy, there's just something not quite right about it. I think I must have read a different book to loads of you, because loads of people have been raving about this. All the characters were insufferable, and sometimes that can be fun when reading a book when you hate the characters, but not in this instance. The short punchy chapters were its saving grace, because I actually found the story very, very slow burn. This is my second haunted house novel in close succession, and it didn't help that I read it not long after Play Nice by Rachel Harrison, and I much preferred Rachel Harrison's book to this. We Live Here Now had potential to be really creepy, but I just felt the author didn't push it enough, so I gave it 3 stars out of 5. Next we have Believe by S.M. Govett. I met this author at Theakston Crime Festival and she was super nice. 10 years ago, the main character was assaulted at work, and to this day she's still suffering from post-traumatic stress, and particularly she suffers from blackouts where she loses chunks of time and has no memory. Her life then falls apart when her husband gets accused of doing exactly the same thing that was done to her 10 years ago. I like to go into books blind, so I went into this blind initially, but around the 15-20% mark, I actually had to look at the blurb because I had no idea what the book was about. I did find the first quarter of the book really slow and boring, but once I hit that 25% mark, I did find that the story really picked up and I started to enjoy it so much more. That is until I got to the end, where I just thought it was a bit silly and far-fetched, but overall, I quite enjoyed this and I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. Next we have The Suicide House by Charlie Donnelly, who is my latest author obsession, and I'm working my way through his backlist, and this is book 2 in the Rory Moore Lane Phillips series. Even though this is book 2 in the series, it can be read as a standalone. About a year ago, 2 students were found murdered by their teacher on an abandoned property outside the school's grounds. Students are now killing themselves and committing suicide at the same house, so a podcast is launched to try and understand what is going on. Overall, I thought this was all right. I loved the case. However, the writing really annoyed me. We got a lot of repeat information. Like, if I heard one more time that Rory wears Madden Girl boots or drinks Dark Lord, I was going to throw my phone at a wall. It was really frustrating me. I preferred this to book 1, but only by a teeny tiny bit. It's definitely safe to say that I think this author's strength is in his standalones as opposed to this series. There are so many incredible crime, thriller, police procedural series out there, such as the Robert Hunter series and the Tillian Poe series, that I just feel that this series lacked sparkle and just didn't stand out. I gave it the same star rating as I gave book 1, which was 3.5 stars. Next is Spider to the Fly by J.H. Market. This is about a serial killer who kills his victims by letting them be poisoned to death by spider bites. The story actually follows main character Ellie as opposed to the serial killer. Ellie is a true crime author and she runs a really popular true crime forum. And the inspiration for her writing a book and starting this forum was the fact that she looked identical to one of his past victims. As you may or may not be aware, the serial killer trope is my all-time favourite trope, and the fact that this serial killer is using spiders, I thought that this would make a great spooky season read. I absolutely love the investigation and the case, but what I felt let this book down was there was a lot of drama between the characters. Don't get me wrong, I love a bit of drama, but there is a time and a place for it, and I just didn't think that it worked with the story, so I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. Then we have Freida McFadden's latest release, which is The Intruder. Casey lives in a cabin in the woods and it's not built for this hurricane which is on its way. However, she is much more concerned about the girl that she has seen lurking outside her window covered in blood. I personally think that you could really see that Frida had written this for spooky season because it was very atmospheric and creepy. I wasn't sure on it to start off with because it didn't feel like a usual Frida book, but the more I read on, the more I enjoyed it and the more it felt more like her usual style book. There was lots of twists and turns, lots of jaw-dropping moments. Overall, I enjoyed it and I gave it 4 stars out of 5. We are now 10 books down and 4 to go. If you've made it this far, then thank you ever so much. If you're not already doing so but would like to hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. Now on for the final 4 books. So the next book is You Will Never Be Me by Jessie Sutarno. This is basically an influencers behaving badly style book, which is a trope which I'm quite enjoying, but actually it gets quite dark towards the second half of the book. I have actually had this on my shelf for quite a while, but the Goodreads ratings were putting me off. However, I am so glad that I did decide to read it because it was light and easy and just what I needed at the time of reading it. And this is just a sign to not pay attention to the Goodreads ratings. At the end of the day, we all have different likes and different dislikes, which keeps the world such an interesting place. I personally really loved this and I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. Then we have another Frida book, which is Never Lie. I've mentioned this before, but I'm slowly working my way through her backlist. Newlyweds Trisha and Ethan are searching for their dream home. They go to have a look at this house and they get basically snowed in and trapped. The house used to belong to renowned psychiatrist Dr. Adrian Hale, who one day just vanished. While stuck inside, Trisha comes across some tapes which are basically recordings of Dr. Hale and clients. Because the blurb was giving creepy house vibes, I thought that this would be a good book for spooky season. This just felt like a traditional Frida McFadden book. You know, it was fast-paced, super easy to read, short punchy chapters which leave you wanting more. I really enjoyed it. I thought the ending was brilliant and it's one of my new favourites of hers, and I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. My second favourite book of October was Dissection of a Murder by Jo Murray. This isn't out until May, but if you love legal thrillers, then it's worth making a note of this one because I thought it was brilliant. Jake Millman has been charged with murdering a well-respected judge. Leela Reynolds has been appointed to represent him and she is super stressed. First of all, this is her first murder case. Second of all, last time she represented Jake, she lost. And thirdly, she is going up against her husband, who is 11 years her senior and way more experienced. I love legal thrillers. And when a legal thriller is done well, then it can be phenomenal. And I thought that this was the case for this book. I inhaled it. I couldn't put it down. I thought it was brilliantly well written. The author actually used to be a barrister, so I also felt that I learnt loads about the UK legal system. I did guess a couple of the main twists and I didn't quite like how the book ended, so it was very close to being a 5-star read, but not quite, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Then my favourite book of October is My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney, which is her upcoming release, which is going to be out in January. Main character Eden Fox returns home from a run to find that her key just doesn't work in the lock. A woman who bears a very similar resemblance to Eden, apart from the fact she's a little older, opens the door and claims that she is in fact Eden Fox. And what is even stranger is that Eden's husband backs this stranger up and claims that this stranger is in fact Eden Fox. I inhaled this book within 24 hours in 2 sittings. If I hadn't have had my job to go to, I would have binged it in 1 sitting. It was so addictive. It was a case of when you're reading it and you're like, just one more chapter. Okay, just one more chapter. And it was also so cleverly well written. The twists were twisting. They were brilliant. It's close between this and Beautiful Ugly, but I would actually say that this is my new favourite Alice Feeney book. But the real question is, did I give it 5 stars out of 5? And yes, I did. I gave it 5 stars out of 5. It was perfection. 10 out of 10, no notes from me. When it comes to planning a TBR, I am notoriously terrible at sticking to them. However, I've got 4 books which will definitely be on my November TBR because 3 of them I'm part of the way through and one of them is mine and Michaela's book club pick for November. On my Kindle, I'm reading As for Andrea because I thought it would be a good spooky season read. I was hoping to actually have finished it for this wrap up, but time just got away from me. On audio, I'm listening to The Death of Us by Abigail Dean. I'm 10% of the way through, so it's too soon to say much. My physical book, which I'm reading, is The Pie and Mash Detective Agency by J.D. Brinkworth. I'm about halfway through and loving it. I'm reading it as part of a vlog, which I'll be posting in a couple of weeks. Continuing on with the Charlie Donnelly obsession, Michaela and I are both really enjoying working our way through his backlist, so as our November book club pick, we're having 20 Years Later. If you would like to see all the books which I've DNF'd prior to this video, then make sure to check out this video here. If you've not had a chance to check out my previous video, my top 10 dark psychological thrillers of all time, then that will be linked here. Thank you ever so much for taking your time to watch this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you, bye!